Hello, everybody. We'll just be a couple minutes here. Settle on in, get some popcorn. We have Tony Barthel waiting in the green room. He did request a margarita machine and a keg of beer. I don't know what this means.
Sharing this all over the place.
Want to say hi from the green room, Tony? Wave at everybody. They can't see you. Just say you're the VOG from the green room.
Yeah.
Two-minute warning.
This is quite the catchy tune.
I was gonna put some Daft Punk on here, but the thing is, you get kicked off of everything. Or I did have Rolling Stones, playing a little earlier, but we can't do that either. So.
Oh, we don't own the rights.
We don't have the rights. Now, watch this. If I've done this correctly, no hands, this is going to transfer over and kill this.
Like magic.
Like magic. Ta-da. Ta-da. Look at that. Worked. Hello, everybody, Earthlings, people on nearby planets, outreaches of the galaxy, whatever. I know. I'm Mike Sokol from RVelectricity, and tonight we're going to have an interesting discussion with Tony Barthel. Let me just show you a couple of quickie things here. I am going to be covering the future of eRVs. I just have about a 5-minute slide presentation to do, but first, we're going to get Tony to say hi to everybody. Where are you, Tony? It looks like you're at the North Pole.
I am at the North Pole. No, I'm in New Mexico, where we had, for all of my friends who live in colder climes, we had a day that was almost 60 degrees today. It was almost a shorts weather day.
And hence the Hawaiian shirt. Is that you're just kind of like rubbing it in?
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to wear red in honor of RVelectricity.
That's true. And if you guys haven't figured this out, I didn't figure it out till afterwards. What happens to Star Trek with all of the guys that wear red shirts?
Uh-oh.
They are the ones that get eaten by the monsters or vaporized in the transporter. And somebody pointed that out to me later. So I'm trying not to do that. I've got a lot of electrical stuff here, but I think we're going to be okay. We will be set for, we've got hi, Mike and Tony. Look at this. We're already getting people logging in.
Oh.
So feel free to log in. Is that you, Tony?
It's the cuckoo clock, and I'm going to get
It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's charming. It's a charming thing.
First, it's just giving me the bird.
So there you go. So yeah, too much. Don't quit your day job. Okay, so I'm going to back up here, and I'm just going to take about 5 minutes just to go through a few slides to kind of introduce this. Tony, I'll keep you live audio-wise if you want to comment on any of this.
Okay.
So basically, here I've been studying this for a number of years, and in fact, last July, a year ago, I had talked Volkswagen out of an ID4, just a little electric SUV, and I had a Safari Condo teardrop trailer just to see, what would happen with all the mileage. It was not a very successful test because at 65 miles an hour, I was still losing 65, 70% of my range. And so I've just done kind of a deep study in this, and there are some alternatives. So let's talk about this. Are we there yet? So you can see. Whoops, here we go. Let me make sure I get my slide punched up. There we go. So are we there yet? Okay, so the automotive industry is in full swing promoting electric trucks and cars. You cannot turn on the TV for 10 minutes without seeing some smiling person blasting around in some new electric, whatever it is. They don't talk about the charging times. They don't talk about, do we have energy to charge them? They don't talk really about the range. They're just smiling and going fast. Now, I will admit, these things go fast. I was at the Detroit Auto Show a month ago and change, and I actually got to blast down the road. They have a drag strip set up in the middle of this big thing. So they put you in an F-150 Lightning with a test driver, and they strap you in, and then they make you sign off all the insurance waivers. So in case you literally, I said, "Is this in case we explode in a ball of flames?" And he said, "Well, yeah, technically." You got to admit the acceleration is thrilling. But are we ready to tow things with them? And what does this mean to the average person in terms of charging times and prices and all that? So Tony and I are going to discuss that. Now, I just did a bit of a meeting the other day with some of the RV industry leaders to discuss the future of this. And I found that the RV industry is seriously watching all this development from the automotive industry. And they're working on developing electric towable RVs and motorhomes. I mean, they are really, really working on this. But again, are they doing the right thing? When is this going to happen? Who knows? So basically, what is an eRV? They're not exactly what you think. So basically, any RV that uses electricity as its primary power source, you could call it an eRV or an electric RV. So many of you may have seen a number of just Airstreams a couple of years ago. They have eliminated a lot of the propane appliances, and this would be instead of a propane powered refrigerator, it could be like a 12-volt DC refrigerator, an induction cooktop, and a variety of other things. And so this also includes adding a lot of solar power, lithium batteries, and such. However, the most exciting part of it is the self-propelled eRV trailers like the Airstream eStream. And these things have got built-in batteries as big as an electric vehicle. I mean, 75 kilowatt hour batteries, motor generators in the wheels, and they push themselves down the road behind your truck. It's just kind of fun. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have seen. Tony and I are under a lot of NDAs and whatnot, but we can talk about the things that we've seen that have been from other press releases and make a few swag, scientific wild ass guesses about, where this may be going. Did I say that, Tony? I can't say that on the air. So meet the
Well,
Airstream.
I hadn't heard that.
A swag?
Yeah, I've heard of it was always stuff we all get when you get the swag bag at a, or actually it wasn't stuff we all get, but that's,
Oh yeah, that stuff. Yeah, well, for me, and I've been in engineering for like 50 odd years, and so people would say, give me a number, and I go, let me make something up here, and you're just kind of like grabbing stuff out of the air and counting with your fingers, and I used to do it with slide rules back in the 70s. But the Airstream eStream, and we've seen pictures of this. This has built-in 75 kilowatt hour battery, motors in the wheels. One of the really cool things you can do is drive this thing around the parking lot with like a little app on the phone or in a remote control so that you can park this thing without having to back up, with trying to back this up with a truck. And there's a lot of people that are casual users that have never backed things up. I've been backing things up since I've been 10 years old, with a trailer behind it. And I got pretty good at it, not as good as an over-the-road trucker that does this, a bunch of times a day. But for a lot of people, this would be really, really cool if you could just sit there and just move it around, spin this, turn it around like a zero-turn mower. Plus, that 75 kilowatt hour battery helps push this down the road behind your, let's say, your F-150 truck, your Lightning. And so in theory, you would not reduce the mileage from 300 miles down to under 100 miles, which is what happens right now when you take an electric pickup truck and try to tow something like this. So this is one thing that the guys at Airstream are working on. I think it's a gorgeous piece of technology. Plus, that 75 kilowatt hour battery in there is good for running the air conditioner and whatnot for days if it was charged up. It's, so to put this in perspective, a normal 100 amp hour battery is going to be like 1.2 kilowatts of energy. This has got 75 of those. So that's what, like 60 times? It's like having 60 batteries. Interesting, huh? The Lippert Edison is another one. This is a base trailer, and this has got batteries built down in the bottom section. This is just their control one that they're working on here that they've published so far. We've not to actually get to see. I have not seen one in the flesh. I think, Tony, you were within a door.
I was literally on the other side of the door from where that thing is right now at the old Hummer factory, and was not allowed to turn the handle. It would have, I think they would have chopped my hand off.
Well, it's like an airlock. I mean, it's probably a vacuum barrier on the other side, and you would have it would have sucked your eyeballs out. So good thing you did not do that. But this is another one. So this is a base unit. This is what they've published that, that they could sell to other manufacturers that they could put their own trailer bodies on. So this would be kind of fun. Now, when I was go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
That Lippert, Lippert makes the vast majority of chassis for towable RVs, fifth wheels, and travel trailers, and so that is kind of keeping in line with that. It's interesting materials used too, but I got to talk to them yesterday, And there's some interesting things that they're working on with that chassis that are well beyond just having it compensate for aerodynamic drag and all that good stuff. So it's a neat. So we'll talk about that more, but
Yeah.
that is a neat piece of technology that they're working on.
Cool. So the next one is Harbinger. Harbinger, I believe is how you pronounce it. They have a what you might call a Class C chassis. So in the back here, and this was at the Detroit Auto Show. There's me hanging out with these guys. So this is like a big old delivery truck that you might have as a food truck or something for UPS or FedEx or whatever. But this is what this thing looks like here. They can come in various wheelbase lengths. They can put various numbers of batteries in it. It's got an electric steering wheel with feedback, and this is designed to go 250, 300,000 miles before a major rebuild, unlike a normal vehicle that might go 100,000. So if you were going to sell this thing to UPS or FedEx or any other guys, they would laugh at you if you said, yeah, it'll run 100,000 miles like your car. So this is built to be able to do this. Now, this is the first one I've seen that looks like you could put a really interesting Airstream thing on the top of this. Remember the old, what did they call those, Tony? What was it, 328s? You know, the things that it wasn't a towable, it was an Airstream Motorhome, which I just thought were just cool.
Yeah, those things were interesting with that GM 8.2 liter gasser in it. And at the time they were kind of having trouble selling them, so they did all sorts of mods, including a funeral coach.
Really?
They made several of them.
Oh, Tony, you're just like a wealth of information here. I had no idea.
Yeah, you could put the guest of honor in and several of the people who had not suffered the same fate yet,
wow,
and take them all to wherever you wanted to go. But yeah, there's an article. If you look at Stressless Camping, there's an article about the Airstream funeral coach. It's an unusual piece of machinery.
Now, here's a good one for you, because I was talking to a guy from Winnebago the other day, and he said, remember, we're the guys that did the helicopter RV. It was actually a real thing. When I saw it, I thought it was a joke. I said, oh, no, it's a real thing. We did it to promote, you could go anywhere. Now, that is some serious boondocking when you can land your helicopter wherever. I've threatened to put a heliport in the backyard here. I would have a reason to do it if I had one of those.
Absolutely. Well, there was, when I lived in Southern California, one of the owners or founders of Robinson Helicopter, actually, they make small helicopters. And this guy got so many complaints from his neighbors because he would just fly home and land in his yard. And, so there you go. Anyway.
Okay. So, but this is what I think a really interesting starting place would be. I want spelling error, don't tell anybody. I want an ID Buzz Westphalia conversion. So the ID Buzz, I know, Tony, you've looked at this. There may have one next year for me to play with. This is, you can get this in all-wheel drive, 300 plus mile range. I got to tell you, this thing, and it goes like a rocket. I mean, all of these things are just incredibly full of torque. I mean, so much fun. That's what I think the beginnings of this could be, because, a lot of motorhomes really from RVs began with a bunch of hippies driving around in microbuses. So this is basically the microbus version. The one thing that's terrifying to me is it's supposed to be an autonomous driver. So pictures that I've seen of it say that when you go on the interstate and you put it into self-driving mode, they said that the steering wheel folds up inside of the dashboard.
Whoa, that I hadn't heard.
That was the rumor. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm not sure I could do that. I've been driving since I've been like 12 years old. Not on the highway now, officer. Not on the highway. But by golly, I like to have a steering wheel in front of me. So let's look at a couple talking points here. Will any of this reduce the range loss of something like a Ford Lightning when towing? What will the cost of these trailers be? When will they be available for sale? Will all these batteries be safe? We're seeing things now about batteries exploding and such. Is there enough lithium and rare earth elements to make all these batteries? And how will we charge this entire mess? Good heavens. Okay, Tony, I've got a couple of questions here for people that have already been sending them in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There are some good
Okay,
questions.
Snoopy says this. Looking forward to today's information with Tony. He's Tony with an I. Wow, that's very
Oh,
artsy.
it's no, it's actually
Is that the girl
Tony with an
version?
I is yes. It's for a lady, and I have never been accused of being a lady.
Okay, so Tony with a Y, but that's okay. I thought that was pretty cute. Okay, so let's see how to blah 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 blah. Okay, well, here's an interesting question. Robert Pulliam says, "How heavy are these things with that weight?" Okay, let's
Yeah.
just do a couple of rough guesses here. Now, I'm not seeing anything. One of the things that I've talked to a number of the RV or not the EV manufacturers is about this is towing a trailer that's that for an electric vehicle really isn't about the weight. It's about the wind. It's about the wind resistance. Once you get that thing going, it doesn't, it's not going to cost you much extra electricity to keep it going. And when you go up a hill, you're basically building up a little potential energy. When you come back down, the thing can help drag it down. But have you heard any rumors on weight on these things?
I haven't, but if you think of, what does 100 amp hour lithium battery weigh? 22 pounds or
Yeah, and
so,
this is
something like
equivalent to
that.
60 of those.
Yeah.
So again,
So it'd be heavy.
it would be heavy, but it
Yeah.
would be down below between the chassis. I don't know, but it's probably going to add a couple thousand pounds to one of these things. I would just wager a swag.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is going to be heavy. There's some interesting stuff that it adds, but how are the manufacturers? Tongue weight. That's an interesting one. Done Right RV Reviews has a good question about tongue weight. And what I have been told about these is that, for example, the eStream, which is based on the ZF technology from Germany, that they have a battery both ahead of and behind the axle, essentially. So it is actually relatively light, although still within, of course, you still want about 15%, or else the thing is going to behave
Right.
like that. But it should be, half-ton towable easily.
Right. I would think, and part of this is they're saying you could tow these with, SUVs, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
I've been towing stuff. I have hundreds of thousands of miles of towing of all kinds of things. From little to huge. I have never felt like that I had too much truck. I always wanted more truck under me. I
yeah,
always did that.
and
I would do some goofy stuff sometimes, and I was like, white knuckles. I don't like that.
yeah, and in fact, right now I've got truck itch super bad. I really want a 3/4 ton truck.
Right.
Our current trailer that we're picking up Thursday in Indiana is a relatively short 22-foot trailer, but 800 pounds of tongue weight, and
So
it's got a lot of lithium in it.
So you could actually consider this is it the Geo Pro that you're getting or the
No, it's a mini light.
a Mini Light? Okay, well it's the Chevy versus whatever GMC thing, but it has I would consider that an e-trailer basically, right? Can you describe real quickly what that's got in it?
Yeah. So the version we had until August of this year was the Mini Light 2205S, if you want to look that up, which is a two-axle. It's a 22-foot box basically, and it had 720 watts of solar on the roof and 460 amp hours of it's a single master volt lithium battery. So people would ask, how long can you run the air conditioner? 6 to 8 hours, depending on where it's set. Well, this new one, well, what happened is we got rear-ended. The trailer was only a few months old, but the insurance chose to write us a check. So we ordered a new one, and the new one has 1,000 watts of solar and much of the same rest of the gear. And so that's basically the way it's configured. But it's a really nifty package. As I said, it's a single 460 amp hour lithium master volt battery and 1,000 watts of go power cells on the roof and all of that. And boy, it just changes the game
Right.
of how you plan for camping. It's no longer, oh, I better get hookups and top off. If there's any amount of sun out there, you're fine.
Yeah, I've got the GeoPro version of that in a 19-foot toy hauler. It has the 400 amp hour master volt battery and the hybrid inverter, and I think 570 watts or so of solar panels on the roof. It'll run the air conditioner 4 hours at full blast with the doors open. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And it automates all of it. And there's something we could talk in a future thing about mooch docking that it allows you to do. Oh, wait a minute. I just in here.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Walter has a really good point there.
And Snoopy says, OMG, so sorry. My wife is Tony. See?
See? Well, you have good taste in wife names.
That's wife names. Exactly right. Yeah, so we're doing pretty good here because we also had another question from Done Right. How are the manufacturers addressing tongue weight and pin weight with these batteries? It is an issue, but this is also why it's really super important for the RV manufacturers to be working with the tow vehicle manufacturers, because you don't live in a vacuum. These things, have to work together. Okay, so
Well,
Walter's. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
and
ahead, Tony.
that's something that Lippert had talked about. The way Airstream is looking at these electric towables and the way Lippert is looking at this Edison package is very different. I was really surprised to learn how differently the two companies are thinking about stuff. Um, we'll get into that, but I don't want to forget it because I was very surprised and really impressed talking to them yesterday.
So here's something interesting. So Walter Svensson says that F-150 gasser versus Lightning adds about 1,650 pounds of total curb weight. So yeah, I would guess that the batteries are probably a couple of 1,000 pounds of that. Oh, and the other thing, which I forgot to mention, I did, is everybody's all excited about the frunk. Do you know what the frunk is, Tony?
Yes, it's the hole where the engine is supposed to go.
I showed my wife a picture of this Linda, and she goes, "Well, isn't that slick? Can I take this to the grocery store?" And I'm going, "You want to take if I get an F-150 Lightning, you think you're driving it to the grocery store?" And she goes, "Well, yeah. I mean, seriously."
Yeah. So I had several cars with frunks already. I've owned Corvairs.
Corvairs. I had put a Corvair turbocharged engine in a Volkswagen Bug when I was a kid. Seriously, it was very dangerous to do that. Okay, so let's see. Let's see if we have any other questions here that are queued up. Okay, you guys can keep asking questions. Okay, Tony, let's just keep slugging along here.
Yeah.
And as I get more questions in, so what? Now, again, part of the challenge with this is you don't want this trailer behind you to be actually pushing you down the road. You just want it to be making up for its own aerodynamics and having a little bit of tension on the hitch, right?
Yeah.
Do you know anything that I don't know yet about algorithms or how people are doing it that you can talk about?
What I know is that Airstream is one of the few companies that have tested their trailer in the wind tunnel. And if you look at they ran a typical, it was a stick and tin, which is a wood framed aluminum skin trailer. They ran that in a wind tunnel. And then they ran a comparable production Airstream in a wind tunnel. And already the Airstream was significantly slipperier. That's a new word that my mouth can't say.
Yes, that's a good word.
Than the traditional stick and tin box that are so many trailers. So that was interesting. And then if you look at the eStream, which is their electric, it's a prototype. So one of the things that they said is that don't expect this to ever make production the way you see it now, but it is sort of it's like we're trying all the food in the buffet, and then we're going to go back to what we want to eat. How does that sound? But if you look at that thing, there is nothing on the roof. There are no vents. There's no air conditioner. Nothing.
And
So
I think
that
that,
is
yeah, that's the
interesting.
biggest change that's got to happen. Um, because of course, you take something that's slippery like that and you just put doodads on the roof that are hanging out and you have vents and air conditioners and gadgets and a rack. Because RVs have never, trailers have never really had to worry about mileage. You go look at a modern car, they've got the mirrors are aerodynamic and the front is aerodynamic. And my wife goes, why do all these Mercedes look like a Kia? I mean, why is that? And I'm going, form follows function. So what will happen is that they're trying to make these things. Actually, one of the slipperiest things you can get is like a fish. If you could drive down the road with something that looked like a carp, it's that stuff in the back too, because again, the it's just not the front air dam. It's you're trying to reduce the turbulence off the back of the trailer as well. And so
Yeah.
the slipperier that you can make these things. So I think that wind tunnel testing is really what you need to do. Oh, look at this. I have a interesting question here from Robert. He says this will definitely affect the placement of holding tanks versus batteries. Oh, that's a good one. Where do you put the poo, Tony?
Yeah, that'll be the interesting thing, right? I mean, if you look at even a current production Airstream trailer, they are not that great with holding tanks. And so you look at the E-Stream and where they have the batteries, and even that Lippert Edison chassis, and you're right, holding tanks are going to be an issue, and so that's something that they're going to have to address as well.
Yeah, my wife has already said, because I showed her, I said, hey, look at this composting toilet. Isn't that neat? And she says, ain't no way. Don't,
Yeah,
don't,
your
don't,
wife,
don't ask.
your wife and my wife may have read from the same manual on that
So,
because I've looked at them. I'm curious, and that has been outlawed by the selection committee.
yes. So, yeah, that ain't happening. So that becomes one of the issues. The further you get out. Now, here's one of the things that I have been doing some experimenting with in terms of my own home system. I found that and I put in, I guess it's a ton and a half, BTU mini split air conditioner in
Mini
in
split?
my living room. I piped the condensate out to my own 55-gallon barrel for usage because it's basically distilled water. I can get 5 to 10 gallons a day of condensate coming out of this thing. Now we use it for watering
Well,
the plants and the outside stuff, but I could foresee an option on an RV that would capture that and filter it. You want to be careful with that, but mine doesn't go down the road, with spores and crud and everything in it. But water is water. If you had a way to clean it, and there's a couple of systems like that, I could foresee if you had enough power to do this, and you've got to do this in a place that has sufficient moisture in the air. This isn't going to work in super dry desert, but here in Maryland, a lot of times I've got 50, 60% humidity, and I mean water just pouring out of this thing.
there are a few YouTubers and people who've been fiddling around with recirculating water systems. So the water for the shower and the toilet and that sort of thing
Oh
is
yeah.
essentially gray tank into a reusable tank. So you can take, the sink water and shower water, and you could filter it and then use that to flush the toilet or take showers. I don't believe that they have gotten to where you would drink it. I think you can, but I
Like an
believe there
astronaut?
are, uh, yeah, right? I mean, what are they drinking?
That's what they're drinking. I'm not sure. That's
Yeah,
another. I'm pretty sure that's another no go. Of hey, dear, listen, look, test
yeah.
this water out. Look at this. It came
I
right out of the toilet. No, 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 no,
Well,
no.
that
Not going to
was
happen.
there. There was a sewage. There is a sewage treatment plant where I came from in LA many moons ago, and at the end of the tour, they asked you if you wanted to take a drink of the water because it had been so well treated. I don't know anyone
There's the ick
who
factor.
is it's right.
The
It's just it's psychological.
it's psychological. Now, again, now let's talk about a couple of the other little parts of this. Um, do you have any clue on what these things are going to cost? What's the price differential compared to a standard trailer?
Yeah, I mean, what is, you look at what an electric vehicle costs, and they're pricey because of all that battery and technology. Um, they're simpler if you look at, there's not an internal combustion engine and all the management nonsense that goes with that, but those batteries ain't cheap. And so you look at the Palomino Pause because funny thing, you were invited to the RV industry uh, association event the other day. I found my invitation, and so I went back and listened to it. And they were talking a lot about charging infrastructure and all of that and cost, but they're also talking about a lot of composite materials. Well, you look at the Palomino Pause, which is almost all composites and man-made, $140,000 travel trailer.
Yeah, this is going to be expensive. Now,
That's
here's a couple of interesting questions. Here's a comment. Um, let's see. Done right says 9 out of 10 dogs will tell you toilet water is just fine. Woof. My cat, my one cat used to do this. We'd hear the lid slam down in the middle of the night. My wife go, "Why don't you just put that toilet down, the lid down slow?" I'm right here. It wasn't me. And he would actually go in and pop the lid up and drink out of the toilet. And when he pulled back out, it would slam down. He thought it was a dog.
huh,
Now, Walter
huh.
Swenson says AC condensate is highly corrosive. Distilled water. I'd have to read more about that. I used to use what we would call high meg water, in cleaning resistors back when I was building nuclear guidance systems, back in the 80s. I don't know. Walter, is that something that you could send me any information on? I'm always willing to learn. Here's another have. Let me get to this
This
one here.
is
Let me cover this question here. Wayne says, will these trailers also have regenerative braking and compatibility with the anti-sway electronics that is available in some EV trucks? I can talk about regenerative braking. I've played
I
around with
can
this a
talk
little
about the
bit.
sway control.
And the sway control will be another interesting one. I know that one of the hints that we're seeing from the manufacturers is they're talking about integrating all of the systems together between the tow vehicle and the RV and all the other sort of sort of things. So that the regenerative braking is basically like having an exhaust brake. When you go down a hill. I found that I was recovering just when I was messing around with my Volkswagen. I was sitting there just calculating, my range. I have I think what is it, a 6% grade? It's like 13 miles long, right near me. So I've got some pretty interesting ones. It's one of the longest ones in the country, and I was recovering maybe 75 to 80% of the extra power that I was using to going up a hill was actually going back into the batteries going down the hill. And so it's not as big of a deal unless all you're doing is going uphill. When you're going back down the hill, you recover a lot of that extra use.
So, the E-Stream is using technology from the German company ZF, and they towed their version of this over the Alps with an Audi e-tron as the tow vehicle, which is a electric SUV.
Right.
And they claim, thanks to regenerative braking, I believe they had close to 100% power back when they got, they went up, and obviously the battery reserves went down. But as they came down, they used the regen in the
Right.
braking system, or the regen factor, and it pretty much replenished the batteries in the trailer. So,
Okay. So here's
so you just have to go and take it through the Alps.
well, you know what? I could do that. So here, Tony in Infante? Infante. I don't know
Infante?
how you pronounce it. So I'm sorry, Tony. Tony. Wait a minute. Tony with a Y. At least he's got the Y. I'm pretty sure this is Tony's the guy. So as
Yeah.
Michael Makuga asked, what happens when the RV battery dies? I have, and not just the RV battery. What about the EV battery? So, I'm very close to Interstate 95 down, which goes down below Washington, D.C. and whatnot. And if you remember last year, there was this huge ice storm, snowstorm that everybody was trapped
Oh,
there for a couple of days. There was a senator or whatever, somebody who was trapped, and they said the EVs were running out of juice, and the only way that you could fix them was take a tow truck and tow them back. Do you have any thoughts? And then I do have a thought.
okay. Well, I mean, it's like anything, right? If the battery dies, you're simply out of luck. But
I think
I
that's called
think you look
SOL,
at,
Tony,
one of
in
the
in
right,
engineering.
that yeah, simply out of luck.
Simply out of luck.
Um, but but you look at, that was the big fear with the Prius. People are, oh, it's going to die after 100,000 miles, and some of these things are getting 250,000 miles on them because they have such good battery management system and such good battery infrastructure in the
Ah,
vehicle that you extend the life significantly. And
ah.
so, let's be honest, if you find any RV motorized or towable and it's got 45,000 miles on it, it's just done. And I wonder, you look at, let's say you take the E-Stream or you take the Lippert Edison chassis, and let's say it's technically capable of 250,000 miles. The RV that's built on it, it's going
So
to be
fall apart.
long gone before
Okay,
that,
so
right? I mean,
you're talking about longevity of the battery itself before it's worn out. I was talking about what if you're on the road and you run out of juice?
then I think you just have a really heavy towable RV. Although it's going to regen, so it's going to
And now let's
it's
look
going to
at okay, so well that
really
you
add
would
to
on that,
the.
but let's talk about your tow vehicle. How it itself that's electric. I have a solution. I'm not posing this as any good lawyer would say. I don't ask a question that I don't already know the answer to.
Right. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
I've got him on the
obviously,
spot. I've got him on the spot. No, that's okay. Well,
either you're towing, right, until you poop out the battery in your tow vehicle, or there may be a provision to take battery power from the tow vehicle and put it in the
that's one of the
trailer,
things they've
or
talked
you
about that
just.
you could transfer from the trailer into your truck. That's one possibility. I've seen people showing like a little generator that's like a little 2,000 watt generator that's plugged into the vehicle. I did calculations on that. It would be like 48 hours or 50 hours to get a reasonable charge on that. So that's not going to work. But as an emergency thing, so I found a company, I'm trying to remember the name of them, but they made these big battery packs and a medium fast charger. And so you could plug like two or three of these things together. And I think they were only maybe 80 or 100 pounds each. And then each one had like 3.5 kilowatts or whatever of energy in them, kilowatt hours of energy. And one of the things that I laid out, you could take a Ford F-150 Power Boost, and I had one of those. It's got a 30 amp, 240 volt socket outlet in the back, and it's got a 7.2 kilowatt inverter generator built into this. You could make basically a recovery truck that would have, say, 8 of these batteries in the back, 2 of the fast charging things. And in 15 minutes or so, you could just plug into a stranded truck, a stranded EV or whatever, and give them maybe 20 miles of range to, kind of like the guy coming along with a gallon of gas and tipping it in the thing. And the numbers all work. The numbers all work. I could put this into an F-150, and then you would position some of these things as recovery vehicles, every 10 or 20 miles or whatever on, Interstate 95 or wherever you may have these issues. So you send them
Yeah,
out, they hook it up, and they plug it in, and 15 minutes later, the guy goes.
yeah, I think more and more as electrification becomes more widespread, we're going to have roadside assistance programs to
Yeah.
solve these kind of problems. But here's an option. You could say, "Hey, I normally can drive 350 miles on this trailer's range, so I'm going to plan ahead and only plan for 280 to 300 miles." There
What
is that
happens? What happens
technology.
when? Well, so what happens when you have a snowstorm and you're stuck in it? Now, and therein
Snowstorms
lies.
don't happen in the
Oh,
South.
that's right. I'm sorry. You're in New Mexico. You don't have a lot of.
Yeah, yeah, we have snow. I've seen it, but it doesn't come where I live.
That's true. Oh no. Here's another interesting thing. Michael Makuga says, I am also concerned about the service entrance. That's at your house. I will need to charge both an EV and now an eRV. Thoughts? Will 240 volts AC still be sufficient when I need to charge prior to departing? I can actually answer that. I know how that works. So, if you have a level 2 charger in your house, it's basically a 50 amp outlet, and most houses should be able to do that sort of thing. That will take approximately 8 to 10 hours to completely charge your EV truck, and another 8 to 10 hours to charge that trailer. So basically, in a overnight or whatever, you could completely recharge either of those things. If you had a separate 100 amp service coming in, you could charge them both at once. And I will note one of the things that I've been studying, which I think is fascinating. A number of the states, and including Maryland, coming up in the spring, I think, of 2013, they are going to allow a homeowner to add a separate 100 amp service with its own meter for EV charging. And if you limit your charge times from 9 p.m. at night to 9 a.m. in the morning, you reduce your cost per kilowatt hour by 50%. So that means in Maryland, instead of paying 15 cents per kilowatt hour, I would be paying 8 cents or so per kilowatt hour, which means I could fill up the tank on my electric vehicle for $8 and have 300-mile range. Now tell me what gas engine could do that. Now this is assuming that everything else works, but I know guys with Potomac Edison and First Energy, and they said, "Yep, this is coming." So you could put 2 outlets in, 2 Class 2 chargers, and you could charge this thing up and have both your trailer and that charged up overnight. However,
Well,
on the road, what do you do?
yeah, it's at that meeting that RV industry meeting, they had talked about basically working with legislators to create charging stations that are pull through rather than back in. So
Exactly.
that's one thing. Um, but I mean, let's. This is typically how I travel, right? 280 to 300 miles a day. I get to, well, right now we don't do much campgrounds anymore because of the solar on the trailer. But you get to a campground, you can plug the trailer in overnight, and then you go the next day. Or if, let's say, you're waiting to leave your home, so I assume your trailer is sitting outside, and you look at all the solar on these things. Well, if it sits out there for a few days, a week, whatever, it's going to be all charged up at no cost to you.
It
So
would take
that,
about a week with a reasonable amount of panels, but it would charge itself up for free. It would.
yep, yeah. So there is that. Um, but in theory, if you are going to camp, I'm going to surmise that the person who buys something like this, I mean, obviously it's going to have a monster solar system and it's not going to be cheap. And the early adopters are very likely probably more interested in boondocking. So charge stations for them, but then they might go somewhere within 250, 300 miles of home. Well, back up a little bit. KOA did a study, and the majority of people in an RV only, in their study, only travel like 75 miles.
Yeah.
So, let's say you go 75 miles from home and you're boondocking for 3 days. Well, probably by the time you're done with that, you're charged back up just from solar and on your way back home.
It could be. It could be. So
Right.
Another Tony with a Y. Tony with a Y says, Mike and Tony, another question. Will it make sense to tow one of these e-trailers with a conventional F-150 or a Power Boost F-150? I got to tell you, I love that Power Boost F-150. I had it for a couple of weeks. That thing was cool because that you could use that inverter generator while you're driving down the road. I put a 10 kilowatt load bank in the back of it, flipped it up to 7,000 watts, and was driving it around pulling a trailer. So,
Yeah,
and
well,
you could split it so that you and a friend could be each running 30 amp RVs off this thing while you're parked,
yeah, and
not while you're driving.
here's something I had said I wanted to share with everybody listening. And by the way, thank you for being here, everybody. One of the things that the folks at Lippert said is, when you're driving your truck empty, you go take whatever pickup you have or whatever your tow vehicle is, but typically they're pickups, and you can go 400 or 500 miles in a day, right? And it's not that fatiguing. But then you hang a trailer off the back of it, and now there's much more fatigue. So I don't like to drive with a trailer more than 300 to 350 miles
Yeah.
in a day, right? So with what they're working on, not only it compensates for its own losses, so the aerodynamic losses, but also sway and just all that motion and all of the nonsense that's typical with a trailer. Well, you put a brain and two drive motors back there, and suddenly it's as if that thing isn't back there, and you don't need weight distribution or anti-sway hitches. The trailer has that technology built into it. So they were saying that the towing experience is much, much improved. And the ultimate path is to integrate the trailer's brain systems with the tow vehicles so that they work as a team. So the tow vehicle, if you don't know, most modern vehicles, that pedal you step on, the gas pedal or accelerator as it's called, is not really connected to anything more than a sensor. And so it's basically going into the computer, and the computer says, hey, I need to feed more gas or whatever it has to do. Well, if you can tie that technology to the drive system in the trailer, now you really got something. And that's actually what they're working on with these. When it goes wrong, you're just
when the thing goes wrong, you're just hosed. Man, like I was
Yeah.
rebuilding Volkswagen engines when I was like 14, 15 years old. And, I didn't even have a torque wrench or a feeler gauge. I was just like pulling them apart. There's a big lawnmower engine. Nowadays, you can't touch anything without a computer and all of the downloads, everything else. It's just difficult. It just is.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so Walter Svensson has an interesting
Walter's
question.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And we had talked about not only towables, but Thor has alluded to a electric Class B van that has a fuel cell on it.
Yes,
and
the fuel
I think
cell.
there might be a familiarity with Thor and fuel cells. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh God, just stop, go away. But no, but there's some really, really interesting things. I know people are interested in also hydrogen as a possibility. Hydrogen has a much higher density, energy density than these batteries. But hydrogen is an extremely difficult, gaseous thing to move around because extremely high pressure, extremely low temperature, and it leaks through almost everything. The atom is so small; it's the smallest atom you can get. But energy density is interesting because.
But how about? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
What about there's those watt fuel cells. That's what I was alluding to.
Right.
And imagine if you took a Class B van and you put one of those watt fuel cells up front. Those run on propane. Well, everywhere we RVers go, there's propane, right? There's even
propane.
Campgrounds will sell it.
Every darn place. And those, that's another interesting technology that could augment what we're doing, augment the solar at the very least. I don't see these getting to the size within the near future that would be big enough to power the drive wheels directly off of that. But in terms of something that would help augment solar, it would be great because, solar only works when the sun shines is the problem.
Right.
When the sun ain't shining, you're SOL.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
in the dark.
Yeah. In the dark, you're in the dark. So, but let's see. I feel like the locomotive model would be more successful. Okay, so he's talking about a small diesel engine that would be like constant speed charging a battery that would
I
then power that. And you're absolutely right. That's Walter. That's a pretty interesting kind of thing because they've been doing motor generator sets in diesel locomotives for, I don't know, 50 years, 80 years, I don't know, a long time. And it's just a big old diesel engine running a bunch of, running a big generator that's then powering the motors that are down in down in the wheels. And I think it's
well,
interesting when
what
I was a kid, you'd see this going down a big hill and you could watch the heat rising out of them. They just have banks and banks of resistors in the roof. That's essentially the exhaust brake. And it's
yeah.
really, really neat stuff.
Well, how about you could use something like a gas turbine also, and they have them hanging in the back of a lot of airplanes, right? That's
Yes.
the generator set. They're out there. It's no new
I,
technology, and they're very efficient.
I saw a company, I'm trying to remember their name, when I was out at the RV open house a month or so ago out there in Elkhart, and they have a gas turbine that's the size of a little generator and super
Yeah,
efficient,
that would.
super interesting, and they're combining it with the batteries. And they're from Australia, so I'm thinking
Yeah,
road trip, because those guys
yeah.
talk about boondocking. When you want to talk boondocking,
Oh,
you drive off of your property, you're out in the middle of nowhere in a lot of places. But yeah, that's exactly what they did. But rather than a conventional diesel, it was a turbine that was charging the battery. And so, and they said that this was that they actually were running these. It wasn't some, pie in the sky kind of a thing. It was a real unit. Okay,
yeah. It's
look at this.
so
Here
that.
we go. Okay, so here's one. So Tesla just towed 81,000 pounds, 500 miles with their new semi truck without recharging. And they've just started releasing these to a number of the big companies, Pepsi Cola and that kind of stuff. And remember, it's it's not the poundage, it's the darn wind of this thing. So yeah, this I think is the future of all this. It really is. And I saw somebody that had built a kind of a conventional semi truck. He just put a bunch of batteries in there and a big motor, electric motor, and was using this for logging camps where it would go up the mountain
Mm,
and pick up logs and then come down. And they said basically he was almost regenerating more power than he needed because guess what? He was bringing trees, tens of thousands of pounds of wood from up on the mountain down to the bottom. And he said he was making more power than he was using because when he was going back up, he didn't have any weight in it. Think about that. It's turning the potential energy
interesting.
of all those trees to recharge the batteries enough that he didn't have to recharge the batteries much conventionally because he was basically always going downhill with weight and uphill with not much weight. How's that?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, the I think one of the lessons we can learn from this is, we all look at it as one solution. I think it's potentially just a combination of solutions, um, such we come to a more efficient RV. I mean, we honestly could not make a less efficient RV
Yeah, I know.
right
It's
now, right? I
well, no,
mean,
no,
these
there's no reason to before. You just complained about the
right,
gas mileage.
right. And then you got to the campground, used all the power you
You could
said you
want,
paid for.
and many times for free. Yeah, people. Every
Yeah.
time I start talking about the metering campground things, it's pitchforks and torches. People are after me with that, but
Oh
people
yeah.
people waste power a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be one of the other challenges because campgrounds have got to offer charging spots. And I know a couple of the big groups out there. First off, they're saying you're not allowed to plug your truck or Tesla or whatever into this thing. And first off, that messes with all of the design elements. The campgrounds were never designed to have that amount of continuous power all the time. And then of course, what when you have a second vehicle that you're trying to charge, you've got to do your trailer, and then maybe you need to run your air conditioner and other stuff at the same time. So 3 times the amount of power that you would normally
Yeah,
need for just
it's
somebody pulling in with this. Huge challenges, and I won't even get into. We'll have some future discussion about, you know, solar power, you know, renewable energies versus coal versus wind turbines versus all that I've been studying and experimenting with, but we won't get into that today. But yeah, the grid and how you get all this stuff charged at the same time is going to be a huge question. It just is.
yeah, that's going to be a big factor. And will these trailers price themselves right out of the market? I mean, you look at, not too long ago, you could buy a pickup truck for a song and a dance, and now they're expensive, and it's
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of
I
it
mean,
is the
yeah,
technology that's in it. And then now you're going to add this much technology to a towable
yeah,
potentially.
it's going to be tricky. So
What's
now,
the,
and
yeah.
training RV technicians how to work on this stuff. Wow.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me
That's a
pop
whole
through a couple
nother
of
issue.
questions here. And so they were
Okay.
asking, first off, we had the Tesla truck question, right? 500 miles. And then we had another response. What was the average speed in the elevation change? Was it loop or point to point? This is about that Tesla
I
truck
think that's,
experiment.
oh, I thought it was about the going over the Alps, and
No, no, no,
they
no,
were
no. Hang
not
on here. So now I got
clear.
more stuff on more another thing. So Wayne says that test was done on a public highway, Los Angeles to San Diego, I believe. So it would be an interesting thing to do follow up on this if you guys like us to, because Tony and I mean, we're fascinated by technology. Okay, so
Yeah.
Robert also notes we must eliminate fossil fuel. We must eliminate the oil industry and go green. Well, yeah, oh, yeah, power to the people or power to the whatever. I think that eventually we will all do this, but it's you can't destroy the economy while you're doing it. But it's tricky. It's
Right.
just absolutely tricky to do this. I've, I've been driving vehicles for, gosh, 50 odd years. I see how slow this changes. Okay, so here we go.
So
Here's another
Walter
question
has
from
a really
Walter.
good one.
So this one, what any thoughts on what happens if the US had problems like Switzerland where they are not going to allow charging of EVs in certain power situations during the winter? I guess like
I
California
mean,
already did. What do you know,
right?
Tony? You know
I
anything?
mean, it was well. That's one of the interesting things. I say I'm coming to you from New Mexico, and a big factor. We came from California, like so many others, and a factor was the power company's solution to some of their problems was, well, we'll just shut you down for a few days. Well, that's unacceptable. I mean, it's the California. I don't want to. I won't go there, but it that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's a reality. But there are solutions we could do as a society. But how quickly is that change going to happen? And are we willing to make it happen? But yeah, that's a completely legitimate question. There
Yeah.
may be times where it's hot in the summertime, and suddenly whoever your power provider is like, yeah, no. I mean, my air conditioner here in New Mexico has a device, and if there's too much demand on the grid, they can shut the air conditioner off in the summer. Well, I would imagine that an EV charging station may have the same thing. So, yeah, good question. That's
Good
why I
question.
want to
Yeah.
put solar panels on the roof.
So here's
But
another interesting wing. I love the logging truck using trees to ecologically kill more trees, blah, blah, blah. I charge my electric chainsaw from solar panels for the same reason, clear cutting the forest with clean energy. So here's the thing. Now, my kids have done studies on this because my kids are like me. And they said what we really need to do to reduce carbon in the atmosphere is grow trees like crazy, cut them down, and then bury them, and then plant more trees. The worst thing you can do is burn them because you then release the carbon back in the air. So if you sequester the carbon in the logs and stack them up and don't burn them, you are now essentially removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And that is really a thing. He says, save your newspapers and just don't burn them and whatever. Now, each of these things are a tiny part of this, but it shows you how complicated this entire thing is. Now, I've also got another one here. It says Secondo Tranquilli. He says climate scam. Okay, there's an awful lot of people that believe that this is just being made up. I've got friends of mine that just say, well, these are normal things that are going up and down, and everybody's trying to make us do all of this stuff. And admittedly, when you're in California, it looks like they're taxing you to death and controlling what you can and can't do. But I think the fact of the matter is, few of us can deny that the climate is changing. The real question is, what is changing it and what can we do about it? And I personally think EVs done correctly could help with this.
And I mean, if you look at think about your front yard, right? You don't just let it go to heck. It's not a bad thing to take care of where we live. Now, whether we're doing that with EVs or not, it's just doing better things as humans is not a bad thing. I mean, and these electric vehicles and such do bring about more efficient air conditioners.
Right.
And, there's a lot of efficiencies that we could incorporate into, especially RVs.
So here's another one here. And Michael Makuga, says, could the added battery weight in the EV and now battery weight in eRV now drive us to get CDLs? So, okay, now I'm going to get in my soapbox for about 1 minute here. I think it's terrible that people that have got no experience driving anything big can go plop down money, go buy themselves a full-size motorhome, and without any training, go whipping down the highway. Now, this is me because I've been a driver of vehicles of all sizes and shapes and such all over the country. I don't think training is a bad thing. I think that perhaps a special provision that it's not a commercial driver's license. In fact, some states have a non-commercial Class A, but I think training is a good thing. I can see all of the flames coming around me right now. I actually studied to get a CDL when I was doing a lot of pro sound work. And as soon as my boss for the one company that I was working with found out, he says, good, I can get you to drive the semi-truck all around the country. And I said, I didn't get into this business to be a semi-truck driver. I got this in so that I could mix bands, that stuff. So I never completed it, but the study of it was really, really interesting. I think it's super healthy to have more training. Okay, guys, we're about 2 minutes over. We're only going to take a question more, one or more, and then we will open this up for a future discussion. Let's see. Okay, Gyro. Sorry, Mike, I'm heating my house with the trees, which is heating with solar energy via photosynthesis. Yes, virtually all energy except atomic energy on the Earth is solar energy, whether it's wind or water, hydroelectric is all solar. All of this stuff, solar is what drives all of this. We love the sun. Thank you, sun, for all of this. But yeah, and let's see. Walter says, we need third generation of EVs to see real changes. Current EVs required to be driven 80K miles to start to see a real carbon footprint change from an internal combustion engine. Yeah, and they will get better. I really honestly believe that. Yep. I'm studying better ways to mine lithium, better technologies. Secondo says EVs are better because they're more efficient. Climate scam is a separate nonsense. Okay, Secondo, yeah.
All of these technologies that we use, think about 10 years ago, you bought a laptop computer, right? And if you got 2 hours of charge on it, you were doing well. My MacBook Pro, I've been using now this is the second day, and it hasn't been charged.
Yeah.
And so, all this stuff gets better. I mean, think about this. You used to be able to park in your garage, close the door, turn on the engine, and kill yourself.
Right.
And now cars are so clean, it ain't easy
hard
to do anymore.
So and technology marches on. I've got sitting in my other room, I've got a 10 megabyte platter from a hard drive, 10 megabytes, 14-inch platter. And just last week we had the 30th anniversary of the very first text message. It's only been 30 years. Isn't that just crazy? So yeah, we're gonna just take one last thing here. Okay, I totally agree about training. My brother trains drivers to obtain their CDLs, and he died when I told him I could just drive my 50,000 pound Class A with zero training. Yeah. It's terrifying to me, and this is why I also see people backing over top of pedestals at campgrounds because they
Oh,
don't walk around. I mean, and I know everybody says, "Well, it's my right to go do this." Yeah, I know, I know, and nobody wants more training. No one wants more government intervention. But I was as close to a commercial driver as you could get without actually being a commercial driver. I want everyone to be safe on the road. Okay, Tony, I think, do you have any final thoughts? We're going to wrap this up tonight. If you guys like this, we can carry on and do some extended things every couple of weeks because, Tony, you've got a lot of thoughts and opinions on everything, don't you?
when it comes to opinions, I'm full of it.
Full of it. Okay, so any final wrap up for this, what we've done so far tonight?
Just I think the thing that most excites me about the towables is just the use of technology to improve the towing experience. That's what I like. And I'm a believer in solar and lithium in towable RVs because I just bought another one
Yep.
that's got a solar pack, and it does change the game. But do I, it's we'll see where this goes, but it could only get better, just like your laptop.
And just like your hard drive and solid state drive and all the other stuff,
Yeah.
there's so many technologies coming on, and I think what drives this, if you have enough people that want this is what drove the internet. This is what drove internet speed. How many of you guys logged on with a 1200 baud modem back in the day, right? Now they go
Oh
so
man,
fast.
I had
I can't
300s.
even count how fast this stuff is going. You just get a gigabit, and I'm like, do you guys understand how fast a gigabit is?
Yeah.
I had a 300 baud modem that I used to use to connect to some of these computers, and there was 115 baud, which you could actually type faster than that. That was the
Yeah.
railroad
Oh yeah.
stuff. So I think, I have a huge belief in American ingenuity, in entrepreneurs, in engineers, and scientists. We can do this stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have to be because it's just for climate change. I think it'll make a better vehicle, a better driving experience. And it's also good because it will make for a cleaner environment. And it's got to help if you do it right. You do it wrong, and then we're all going to spiral over the edge. There you go.
Yep.
All right. I'd like to
Well,
thank Tony Barthel from Stressless Camping for spending an
hey,
hour
thank you
here.
for having
Tony,
me.
yeah, if you want to do something for your own Stressless Camping and want me to jump in sometime as a guest, you just let me know because, as you know, I'm full of it as well. I've got lots of opinions. And I know how to run a slide rule. I really do. Or I can count on my fingers, whatever it needs. And so much of this stuff I just have crammed in my head because I've been doing this forever. I mean, literally since I've been a little kid. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Oh, Michael, I got to do one last one here. Michael Makuka says, I love
Oh
my
yeah.
300 baud audio coupler where you plug your phone in. Yes, on that, we're going to
Yeah, you
sign.
put the phone on top.
Put the phone in. Yep, that. All right,
Yeah.
everybody. Thanks very much. Send this around. This is available to you like now. And then we'll see you in another week or two with this. Very, very good. All right. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Thank you much.
Yep. Thank you.